We're your host, Artemis Fox.
And Luna Hawks.
And today's episode, The Will of the Witch. And we have Caitlin Matanle on the line. Hey, how are you?
Start over, damn it. You fucked up her name.
I think this has to be like in the actual episode. You have to keep it. So everyone listening, I literally like gave a clinic right before about how to say my name because actually our two lovely hosts know me as a lot of other different names.
Spinabelle.
We used to perform together in the world of circus. I went by a different name. I was married for a time, had a different name. This is my name, Caitlin Matanle. Don't worry.
Matanle, everyone. Caitlin Matanle. Cue the claps.
When I graduated from high school, I actually, they gave a little card. It was college. I don't remember it. You had to like fill out a little card if you had a difficult name. And I literally wrote like phonetically how to say my name because in my entire life, I think maybe twice somebody got it right. So don't feel bad.
It is kind of an odd spelling for the way it's pronounced, I must say.
I just wrote it.
It needs
out
a Y on the end.
Some like Matanle.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
It either needs an extra E or a Y.
So today's episode, we are talking about the will of the witch. Will of the witch. And what it means to you, and maybe if your will's not working, or why doesn't my magic work? I wanted this, and all those little excuses that we tell each other why it doesn't work, or maybe we need to look in that inward mirror. So, what exactly is the tenets of witchcraft? What is like the pyramid or the 4 parts of witchcraft? If you want to answer that.
Well, I don't particularly subscribe to like a specific. Well, I was about to say I don't subscribe to a specific lineage of witchcraft, but that's not actually fully true. But I'm not Wiccan. And where I kind of got this, like I started thinking about will and how it plays out in witchcraft is actually from a concept that is often discussed in Wicca. So even though I'm not Wiccan, I liked what this said about witchcraft, which is this whole idea of how witchcraft, the tenets of witchcraft are to dare, to will. There's a third one I always forget about because I'm not Wiccan.
To know and to be silent.
Oh, there we go. Good. And then to be silent is the 4th that I do remember. So the point of this is that, there are these different aspects to our work as witches that all go together. And I think that often we hear these different ideas about witchcraft, or we hear like these tenets from different lineages of witchcraft, and we don't really stop and think about what they mean. And in my work as both a witch, my personal spiritual practice, as a coach, and as somebody who studies, law of attraction or manifestation as well, I started really paying attention to this idea of will, which is basically that point of deciding that your magic has worked. And I realized that this was, for me and for many others, one of the most misunderstood or completely missed parts of the magical process.
So what does will mean to you?
So to me, will is a decision. It's a choice. Because, we can cast a spell, we can decide we want something, we can set a goal, create an intention. But if we haven't actually decided that this thing is going to happen no matter what, then we can't expect our magic to work. And that is will. So, of course, when we are creating something in the world with our magic, whether that's magic through a spell, magic through, goal setting or intention setting or any other type of magic, if we haven't fully decided and committed to what it is that we wish to bring forth, then we can't expect it to come easily. And a lot of us are actually very wishy-washy when it comes to our will. We think like, oh, I want this, but like, if it doesn't come, like, it's okay because maybe it, wasn't the best time, or it wasn't, God's will, which is, I think, really interesting holdover from Christianity that I see a lot of witches actually, just like they take the word God out and use the universe. It's like, it wasn't the universe's will, which is a thing I don't even believe in. I'll get to that later. But, we think like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't the right time, or maybe it wasn't best for me. And it's like all of these sort of bypassy ways of ignoring and steamrolling over the fact that we actually never decided to be successful to begin with. Of course, sometimes things come into our lives and they end up much better or different than we expected in some way. But at the same time, we can still decide that we're going to have the thing that we desire or something better or in a different form that we're open to, but we're still deciding that we're going to have it.
One thing I like to like teach in my like law of attraction is say you have to do the work first and like the healing work. So like before we send out this magical intention of, let's say hypothetically, like money, I want to send out a money magic spell, but I don't think I'm worth the money to come into, then like my will starts getting like discombobulated and like the universe gets like super confused because it's like, well, what will is it? Like, do you actually want the money? Do you
Yeah.
not want the money? So, you know, it's about being specific and knowing like the self-worth part, right?
Exactly. So, that's why actually when people, and I recently did an episode on my own podcast about like, what does it mean when my magic
What's your
doesn't work?
podcast, by the way?
My podcast is Rebirth of Venus with Caitlin Matanle.
Check it out.
Check
It's
it
really
out.
awesome.
It's really good.
I hope you guys heard that snap at the end.
Yes, yes.
So, I because a lot of people, they feel like they're doing spells or rituals or even just, because I really believe it's all the same. Sometimes that spell or ritual is just like setting a goal and seeing that you consistently don't meet that goal, or, doing a candle spell and consistently not seeing the results of it. And you're absolutely right. A big part of that to begin with is doing the work around it, because any sense of duplicity we have around what we think we want is going to get in our way in everything in life, because I deeply believe we're casting spells with everything we do. It's not something that only happens when a candle is lit, I like candles, so that's why I keep talking about candles.
Same.
Love a good candle moment. So it doesn't just happen when a candle is lit. It happens all the time. And if we have duplicity, like you said, if we feel that, oh, we want it, but we like don't think we deserve it, or we want it, but we're afraid of how our lives will change if we get it, or any of the other number of ways that we are duplicitous around our desires, then what happens is we haven't decided. We don't really have a strong sense of word. And ultimately, you have to think about, here's a good analogy. So say you have a friend who's always like, oh, if you need anything, let me know. Right? And then when you need something, you let them know, and they're like, oh, like I can't really do it. Like I have something to do, blah, 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 blah. You really feel like, okay, I can't really count on their word. Or if it's someone who's, they always say like, yeah, I'm definitely going to come out to your party or whatever, and they like never show up. You can't trust their word. But we very rarely think about how much we can trust our own word. When you say you're going to do something, do you do it? When you decide you're going to have something, do you do what it takes to get there? That's all part of the will as well. But ultimately, it's just about a decision. It's about deciding that you're going to do something. And that's an energetic state. Actually, that's an energetic state more than it is really a like a practical one.
Yeah. So I hear you saying basically that it's all about the power of decision, more or less, and how strong your will is and how strong you believe in your decision for whatever you're trying to manifest or, cast the spell on. So I'm curious what you think or what kind of advice you have. How do you know if your will is strong enough? Like, what's it feel like? And, if you discover that maybe it's not strong enough, what can you do to kind of amplify that?
Awesome question. And it's actually so much easier than you think.
Yes.
Yes.
So, okay, I'll use an example. I was a little bit late to this call because I suddenly found myself in a negative online interaction with somebody that I had not asked to enter, and I had to block the person, right? Okay. So I remember very clearly the first time I ever decided to block somebody. It was actually a former lover. And I was like, wow, I'm like kind of afraid to block this person. I was like wishy-washy about it. I was like, should I? Shouldn't I? Like, what do I need to do? Like, it feels like, oh, it's so extreme. Like I had all this like duplicity around it. And obviously we could like go into why that was, but that's not the point. When I finally did it, like all of this energy led up to that one moment where I was like, block, right? Now, when someone just like, I just don't get the good vibe, it doesn't even have to be as extreme as this, the situation was a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago. All I do is just like click the block button. And that moment of block is a choice. It is a decision. It is my will, fed into my action. Okay. Now, here's the thing. You can go about it both ways. And this is a metaphor for anything in your life. You can be wishy-washy and like, should I? I don't really know. And that's fine. Because if you've never done something before, you're not really sure if you want it. You may have to do more of that inner work of like, is this the right thing for me? And that's great. But the moment you decide to, metaphorically in this case, block the person, do the thing, that is what a decision feels like. Okay. So think about something today that you've decided very easily. Say you were thirsty and you decided to go get a glass of water.
Or some wine.
Or some wine like you're having. Like, what did that feel like? It felt like nothing. It felt like you're just going to do something, because here's the thing. You don't have any energetic resistance to those things. You need to bring that same energy into your magic, that lack of resistance. So if you're feeling like, you know what resistance feels like. You've resisted things before. Yeah. If you feel
like
anything,
tension.
Exactly. Go back and figure out where it's coming from. And there's a million things you can do to get there. But ultimately, that decision is just like this. It's just you deciding to do something, you setting the intention, you intending to take an action and then doing it. And when it comes to a spell you're casting, like Fox, you mentioned money magic. And I've actually, this was an area where I started really playing with this power of will. So if I set an intention, maybe I cast the spell, maybe not. Say I set an intention for, I'm going to receive $200 in the next 12 hours. I don't know. When in that moment, I can decide I'm receiving the $200. Like, it's happening. There's nothing that can happen that will make me think it's not on its way. And every time a limiting thought comes up of like, but will it really come? I say, no, I've already decided it's coming. Keep doing that. And then if 12 hours hits and it's not there yet, I don't quit. I'm like, oh, well, it's coming. It's just maybe an hour late, because I know it's coming. So ultimately that decision is very simple, but it's something we overlook in the simplicity, because it feels like, well, obviously I've decided, but you actually haven't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's interesting. You inspired two things in me right now in this conversation. One is, we all know that magic works the path of the least resistance, and also like the power of habit right now. And you were talking about like, you decided you want a glass of wine or water, and that was just an automatic decision. In this book I was reading called The Power of Habit, it talks about neuroplasticity and being able to connect the different tissues in your brain to where things become an automatic habit. Almost like you backing out of your driveway. You automatically know, you kind of like just second nature back out of your driveway, or, different blinking, or like even things on a subconscious level you just do automatically. So in order to increase the will of the witch, it's almost like we have to be able to be comfortable with our own will, so that our will becomes a habit, versus in the sense of like, I'm going to do the spell one time and yep, I totally believe I'm going to get all this magic and this money. But if you aren't consistently being in tune with your will and being consistent with like what you want and your will and your desire and your knowing, then your will is not really going to work,
Exactly. And, ultimately, anytime we're like, well, but what does it feel like about anything? Because ultimately, the most important part of spell work, manifestation work, anything is the feeling. So you have to feel like you have it. So if you're like, what does that feel like in the case of like, what does it feel like to be in my will, to have will? What does it feel like to like be rich, or whatever the thing is? I always say to look at another area of your life where you feel that way easily. So my glass of water example, or my blocking a person online example, that moment when you feel like, oh, I am just going to do a thing. I don't really think twice about it. So bring into your body what that feels like and literally transfer it to the other thing. And you can like do this with a visualization, like picturing it in your body and literally like pulling it out and putting it in the other situation. Or you can just be like, okay, now I'm thinking about this thing that I have no resistance around in terms of willing it into existence. Okay. I'm thinking about that. Great. I can feel how that feels. Okay. Now I'm going to think about the thing that I currently have resistance around, and I'm going to imagine that same physical feeling associated with that. And it really can be that simple.
Yeah, I love that. So I was listening to that episode that you did recently about a similar topic, and I noticed that one challenge that you said people often have is that they kind of get stuck in this place of like, it's coming or it's about to come, it's about to be here, and how that feels, rather than being in the place of it's here now and how that feels. And so I just thought that was a really interesting concept that stuck with me. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that specifically. That'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was for me personally a huge realization when I started to understand the nuances of these energies, because everything has a vibration and everything has a different vibration. And yeah, like if you currently feel like, ooh, I'll never have something, if you can do the work to get to the place where you're like, ooh, it's on its way, that's actually a huge improvement. So again, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just that like now we need to tweak it a little bit. So now, exactly, you know, you can look at, well, what's my language around it? You know, you can, if you write something for your spell, if you write affirmations, whatever it is, if you journal, what's your language around it? And also, like, how do you think about it in your head? Are you like, oh, it's on its way, it's almost here? And a lot of affirmations that like you see on the internet use that type of language. And again, it's not wrong. It's just not, make sure it's exactly what you want, you know? And so you can look at, oh, okay, like when I'm talking about, I want to make $8,000 this month. I don't know. Am I saying like, ooh, my $8,000 month is on its way? Like, oh, I'm in the process of making it. Okay, great. But how would it feel to have it right now? How would it feel for it to come in this moment? And a lot of times resistance comes up then because you're like, holy shit, I'm terrified when I think about it coming right now. And that's a big thing. Of course, nothing happens overnight, but at the same time, if you're, you know, really freaked out about the idea of having it in this moment, you need to work on that, because ultimately that is keeping it almost here when it could happen right now. And a lot of like quantum leaping, you know, the whole idea of quantum leaping is about ultimately deciding to step into a new reality of understanding in this moment. And while sometimes it can feel like it just happens like organically, ultimately it's a choice. And if you've made that choice, then anytime a thought comes up of like the old reality, so say you cast a spell for, you know, love, and every time a thought comes up of like, oh, I'll never meet anybody, you can say, no, I've already decided my partner is here. I just maybe don't know them yet. I don't know who they are yet, but they're here. They're already here. You can do the same thing with money. You can do the same thing with anything you're trying to call into your life.
So it's all about like not changing it into the I want, because like, you know, the will of the witch or the law of attraction, if you say, oh, it's coming, it'll always be coming. If I want it, I'll always be wanting. And what are you attracting right now? Versus saying, no, it's here. I have it.
I will, you know, and not from like I will, because I mean technically in English will is also a future tense.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you don't want to get like too caught in semantics, because like I do believe that basically you need to like look at how you feel by the words you're saying. But if you say like, for example, I will be a millionaire, okay, like that is projecting it into the future a bit, but at the same time, you know, you may not actually even desire to be a millionaire today. So for me, when I say I will be a millionaire, it's like, it is going to happen. It will happen. I don't desire it to happen today. I don't have like the structures in place that would make it likely to happen today. So that's fine, but it is going to happen. So there are times when that sort of like future visioning of your vision can work. On the other hand, you know, if it's like, I will my partner into my life, or I will, and you know, I'm trying to think of some examples off the top of my head. Okay, like I will my partner into my life. It's like I bring them in, I conjure them forth, they are here. So ultimately, use the words I'm throwing around here as creative encouragement. Don't get married to them, because ultimately it depends on how they make you feel.
Yeah. So like, what happens, what do you have for our listeners if they're like, man, I tried this spell and it didn't work? Like, what should I do? Why isn't this working?
Ooh, okay. For this, I'm actually going to defer to a mentor of mine. I'm going to, well, not quote her, but paraphrase her. And her name is Amanda Francis. And she's not a witch, although I always joke that she is a powerful witch, whether or not she calls herself. But she, talks more about like manifestation. But she says, if the problem is that you're asking, why didn't it work? That's the problem. Because if you're asking like, oh, why didn't it work? It's not here. That means that you're focusing on its lack. You're not focusing on its existence in your life. And faith is something that only starts when it looks like it didn't happen. And so she says, actually, the manifestation process doesn't even start until it looks like it's not happening, because it's easy up until then. Up until then, you can be like, oh, yeah, like, it's on its way, woo. But it's in that moment of like, oh, it looks like it's not here. It looks like it's not happening. It's that moment when, if you can go into that space of still being, as we say, like a match for the thing, and you can decide it's yours. You can decide it's here. You can decide that you're going to be paying more attention to its appearance in your life than its lack of appearance. That's when it comes in. So if you're sitting around asking like, why didn't it work? I would say, well, you're the reason it didn't work. You need to practice faith. You need to practice not just faith, because a lot of people have like a flimsy association with that word that I don't think is, fair, but a lot of people do have that association. It's not just like, I hope. It's like, no, it's happening. It's coming. It's on its way. It's like, this is a oft used metaphor, but like, it's like you ordered a package and it's a day late, but like, it's coming.
Well, it's that faith thing. I like to tell people faith is like the element of wind, because it's something you feel, but it's something you can't see. But it's having like that faith in what like I can see the wind blow and I see the leaves move it, but I can't see what the wind's doing. And that, to me, when I give a comparison, is that it's having that faith, and you see its effects, but you can't see it.
I love that.
That reminds me of how important it is to look for evidence around the fact that it is happening, because often, we're willing something to happen and there is evidence. It just might be different or more subtle or more few and far between than what we thought it might look like. So I think like maybe getting really keen to noticing evidence is a good practice too. Do you do that, or do you have any tips on noticing evidence?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is like the secret sauce, really.
Yeah.
And it's like bedfellows with the will. It truly is. It's okay. Where do I start? So, the thing is, when I completely lost my train of thought on this.
Evidence. Where is
Thank you.
your train of thought? There's evidence that your train of thought is on its way.
I like just
right now.
Yeah. Anyway, so the thing about, you have to honestly be a little bit delusional, or maybe even a lot delusional. I put that like in air quotes, kind of tongue in cheek, but I'm kind of serious too. You have to be kind of delusional in order to be a powerful witch. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking, I'm in. And focusing constantly on where it isn't working, just like you said, you are missing the point. So it's like, okay, to everything, there is two sides. So, okay, for example, with money, is money always leaving your life or always coming in? Obviously, they're both true. Which one are you going to decide is more true? And so really anything that you're looking to embody has like a little bit of its opposite in it. And there's a great book. What is the author's name? The book is, I think, Ellen Dugan, Practical Prosperity Magic. It's one of my favorite books actually on witchcraft in general, not just prosperity magic. And one of the things she actually talks about that is like, that's the whole idea of yin and yang. You know, everything has a bit of its opposite embodied in it. And so like, you know, one can't exist without the other. So in the case of what I just said, are you focusing on things leaving your life or coming in? If you look for evidence, you'll find either. It's like, is the glass half empty or half full? So you have to decide which you're going to focus on. And ultimately, as you're bringing something new into your life, as you're ushering in change, what happens is, you know, there are going to be some things in your life that appear to be out of alignment with that desire. And if you focus on those, then what happens is you stay in that old reality. You know, I say that like our surroundings it's old news. The things in our life is old news. You know, it's based on our past beliefs, our past intentions, our past desires. So it's up to us to create a new reality in the present. So, you know, if I'm calling something into my life, I look, just like you said, for evidence that it is here. And I look really hard. In fact, I refuse to pay attention to anything else. And that's when it comes in most quickly, because you really have to be able to kind of blur out everything that's not in alignment with that vision. And some people call that like delusional. And unfortunately, a lot of people look at that as spiritual bypass, which it absolutely isn't. In fact, it's being a visionary. You know, being a visionary requires you to vision beyond what is around you. And if you're going to do that, then you have to ignore some things. And that's not bypassing, that's just choosing what you believe. And ultimately, that's the job of your brain. This is like the biology of your brain. Your brain is constantly filtering information. And so what it filters is based on the messages you send about importance. And you can send those messages about importance through a spell, through a decision, through something you're focusing on. Everybody's had this experience of like, oh, suddenly I'm really, okay, like just a couple months ago, I learned about like, I don't even know what it's called, but I guess like star seeds, like people who are descended from like other species of humanoids from other stars. I don't know. It's like, I still don't even
I'm
know
not
what
saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Right. Like, I don't
Aliens.
even fully
Aliens.
get it. Like, I don't even fully get it. But I remember like the first time I heard about this idea, I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. What else don't I know? Right. And then like recently I heard someone else talking about it. And then I started seeing people talking about it everywhere. And I don't follow like very many people who talk about it. But suddenly I started seeing it everywhere. And it's because I'd sent the message to my mind, my brain, that like this is important. It's the reticular activating system at work, which is what filters information. And so we have control over that process. So what you're talking about like focusing on on the evidence of what you desire, if you focus on that, then eventually you actually do literally see more. And one could argue, like, are you even, like, did the spell work, or you just, like, paying better attention? And I would say, I think they're one and the same.
Do your spells even work, bro?
Do you think, like, maybe that's sort of how, like, why we see, like, repeating numbers so much and so easily once you decide that it's a thing and that they show up? Like, you notice more kind of stuff, like, you know, as a simple example.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you want to share with us, like, anything that's, like, either you sent your will out there and your will wasn't, quote, strong enough, or you didn't believe it, and then, or share another thing where your will was strong and you're like, yeah, I made that fucking shit work and I made my spell come into action?
Oh, totally. I mean, honestly, I've had more times in my entire lifetime practicing witchcraft, like, I've had more times when the spell didn't work, and I'm putting that in air quotes, than did. And here's the thing. The reason it didn't work is not because it didn't work, because the reality is often if I looked back, and that's why it can be helpful to track like what you're doing and like what exactly you say and what exactly you're calling in, because often you can later see, ooh, I did that, but not the way I expected. Or, oh, I did receive that, but I wasn't specific enough. Or, oh, like I got exactly what I fucking asked for, but it was like a fucking nightmare, you know?
Yeah.
And I have a million examples of those things. And about the latter, I think it's important to state, like, it's, well, often for me, I'm very powerful in road opening magic. And it's just like an area of magic that comes very naturally to me. So removing blocks, opening the road. I have had couple of experiences that come to mind where I felt stuck in my life. I didn't know why I was stuck, and I did one of these workings. And both times, what it ushered in was sort of like a tower-esque era, a Kali era of everything burning to the ground. Now, I could look back and be like, oh, it didn't work. That wasn't what I wanted. But the reality was, you don't have to be afraid of your own power, because whatever your call in, I believe, is going to happen anyway. Probably on a shorter time or a slower timeline. It'll be like less painful because it'll happen over 5 years as opposed to like 2 months. But personally, I actually want the fast track. Like, I don't want to waste my fucking time. So ultimately, yeah, it didn't work out the way I expected, but it did give me exactly what I wanted. And so you don't have to be afraid, but you do have to be open. And ultimately, if you bring something in that's like, in the movies, there's all these examples of like, be careful what you wish for. But personally, I think that's fear mongering designed by the like new age establishment to keep us out of our own power. That's just what I think. I say like the best way, and a teacher of mine, a past teacher of mine, Carolyn Elliott, talks about this really poignantly. She said, the best way to find out what you actually want is to get what you thought you wanted and to realize it like is fucking terrible.
Ooh, that's good. Well, it's like, it's asking for a new car, and then you get a 1976 beater, like rust-filled car, and it's like, the universe is like, girl, it's a new car. You asked for
technically. New to you.
It makes us better witches. It's fine. It's just like, because you get to choose again, you don't just like get one chance and now you're fucked. Like, and that's how a lot of people act. And that's just not my experience personally.
Well, it's kind of like when we were talking with Alexia on our last podcast we had of Mercury and Gatorade, where we talk about that for all listeners, if you're just listening now, go ahead and listen to that episode. I changed my whole perspective on Mercury in retrograde, because she brings it up that sometimes you need to go through these hardships. And I asked her, like, the end of the episode, I go, Lexi, do you have any suggestions for our listeners on how to avoid Mercury retrograde? And she's like, fucking nothing. She's like, you need to go through that shit.
There is no avoiding
There is no avoiding it. You need to get your sea legs. You need to get used to the Mercury energy. It happens 3 to 4 times a year. So embrace it, because every time that you go through a retrograde, you're going to learn something, and you're going to go through some kind of way that's going to teach you. Kind of like in our will and our spells that we do, is that we learn something every spell that we do.
Totally. I love Mercury retrograde personally. And again, it's just like that energy of reevaluating, of, purging. It comes really naturally to me. I think it's like my Chiron in the 12th house.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it just comes really naturally to me. And so I actually love it. And I think like it's super misunderstood energy. But we won't get into that because you already did an episode on it. But, it's funny because what you asked earlier about like the times of when my will was not strong enough or was strong enough, it's not even about like it being strong or not strong enough. It's just, once you feel in your physical body what it feels like to have decided something, you immediately know all the times you didn't do that before. And that's why, like, just pay attention over the course of your day of like the little micro decisions you make, and literally physically feel like what that feels like, because that's the energetic imprint. We, there's so much in this whole world that like people overcomplicate, about like becoming like a vibrational match for the thing. And it's like literally all that means is just like feeling the exact way that you feel when you have decided something, when something is easy, like whatever it is that you're calling it. And once you know what that feels like in your body, you can pay attention to that and you can like conjure that up again and again. And that's just practice.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. It's the feeling of clarity, essentially.
And consistency. I really like that we can like tell our listeners today that it comes down to not just with the will of the witch. It's not just like when we light our candle and want to get super like
Right.
spiritual for a second. It's like the will of the witch is more of like a consistent practice. It's us. I wake up in the morning and I'm going to have confidence in what I'm going to do. I'm going to fucking block this asshole that I want to block on my Facebook because I have the will to do it. So in order to increase our magical abilities, we have to have a consistent will in our life, not just when we cast our circle, but in our everyday decisions, and that can help increase our magics.
Yes, because ultimately, yeah, I mean, that's actually such a great point. I'm glad you mentioned it because we can practice this will in other things. So if it feels like a little too loaded in your magic, like the pressure's too high, practice in other areas where you like, when you have a desire to do, like we have so many little things that over the course of the day come into our head, like, oh, I would like this. Oh, I'd like that. Maybe I should do this. And they're all amazing opportunities to practice the will. So for example, this afternoon, I wanted ice cream, right? And I could have been like, should I get ice cream? Can I afford fancy ice cream? Should I like eating ice cream at all? Like, I mean, like whatever. And you know, yeah, like it's so bad for me, like whatever. But I wanted ice cream. And so instead, I'm in the practice now of just like going for it because ultimately I believe that like all of our desires lead us somewhere. And it's not like, you know, when I walked into the ice cream shop, I had this like life-changing experience, but it's just like, it's this practice of taking our desires seriously, like trusting ourselves. And mostly beyond even those two things, it's this practice of deciding something and then willing it into existence, even if it's just like an ice cream you paid for, right? That still wills something into existence. And the more you do it, it sends this really powerful message to your brain, which is the most unsung partner in our magical craft, the brain. Which is like, you know, we get into the habit then of being like, oh, well, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Even if what you're practicing on is super mundane, like when I say I'm going to go get an ice cream, I do it. It sends this message to your brain that you can trust your word. And then when it comes to the big things of like, I'm going to make $8,000 this month, or I'm going to, you know, whatever, it's like, oh, this is a thing we're doing. This isn't a thing we're like dreaming of, we're thinking about, we're maybeing. It's a thing that's happening. Yeah. And that is totally just a practice.
So it's a consistent practice. Something we can leave our listeners on is that the will of the witch is, you know, the belief, but also it's a consistent practice. It's not just something like we said when you light our candle, but just going to the ice cream shop, blocking that asshole on Facebook, you know. it's going through these.
Go back to him.
Fuck that guy. It's having that consistency with your will. I'm going to bring it back to one of the original definitions of magic. It is the art and science of causing change in conformity with will.
Yes,
and like,
I love that. It's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
And that's what we're causing right now, right? Is that this is our own art and science, and we are causing change in our life in conformity with our will.
Totally.
It's all just a practice, and ultimately, not only is it a practice, but all of this is about consistency. You know, it's easy to like think it's working and to find the evidence when like things are going well in your life, but that doesn't even count, honestly. That's just like the stuff that we're doing, obviously. It's the moments when it looks, like I said earlier, where it's not working, or when it looks like, oh, maybe the spell didn't work, that we decide it's happening anyway. And if you can be consistent with those moments, you are going to see such rapid improvement in the results you get in every area of your life, because it's that consistency that, you know, if you're basically giving it like a constant energy source to grow, as opposed to like, oh, I'm going to water you, but then like, oh, I'm not going to water you for a week. It's like, for me, if I have a house plant, you know, I expect it to grow. Like, obviously it's going to die if I water it a lot one day and then I forget about it for 2 weeks. And then I'm like, oh, it's not growing. I don't know what to do. And I like water it too much again. And it's like, that's not how things grow. And it's the same with our magic. Cool.
Well, thank you for helping us with the will of the witch. And our listeners can, listen to us and like find their own will. Now for our favorite part of the show, witchin' and bitchin'.
Oh my God, one of my cats just like looked up from her nap terrified. Like,
Oh
what
man,
the
it takes
fuck
a
is
lot to scare a
happening?
cat.
We want to hear something that you as a witch want to bitch about, and we will all bitch together. And let us know what's something you want to bitch about right now.
I would love to talk about spiritual business.
Okay.
And what I specifically mean is that there are a lot of people in like the psychic services industries. There are a lot of people in the world in honestly any like niche industry, which psychic services is definitely one. By that I'm including like tarot readers, I'm including professional witches, etc. I'm going to focus on professional tarot readers. So there's this belief that if you are, using your spiritual gifts, then like you are inherently incapable of having a business. And what I mean is this, like, I hear the snapping. There's this idea that like business is hard, and that it's kind of like the starving artist mentality that has been shifted, I think, onto like psychics and witches and things like that. And what I'm not talking about is like people who feel like they can't earn for their gifts. Like that's like a whole separate thing. What I'm talking about are people who like really, really, in my opinion, they have this like deep power in this one area in terms of their spiritual gifts, and they're severely disempowering themselves in other areas. And this comes back to the consistency we're talking about, because how you do one thing in your life is how you do everything. If you're powerful in your magic, but you're not powerful in the mundane world, like the everyday world, then you're actually not only reducing the natural power of your psychic gifts, and you're not able to like provide a transformation to the people who come to you for a tarot reading or an astrology reading or whatever. Not only that, but you're basically buying into this idea of separation. You're buying into this idea that like I can be gifted in one area and not others. And you're kind of you're basically, that's basically it. That's basically it. I was thinking about this a lot recently because I like hang out in a tarot group on Facebook, and I like to like provide business insight. And one thing that I see really commonly is this idea of like, oh, like I want to do this thing, but like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. And to those people, I want to say, how did you get to this place with your gifts? How did you become a gifted tarot reader? How did you become a gifted witch? Like whatever it is you do. Obviously, this applies to everybody, not just witches and tarot readers, but they're my examples. How did you get to that place? You got to that place from listening to yourself, from trusting your inner guidance, from paying attention to, this, like maybe you pay attention to signs, or maybe you pay attention to nudges from within. That applies to every area of your life, not just this one thing you do that you want to grow a business out of.
It's like spirituality assists.
It truly does. And like, I'm a business coach and I work with a lot of people like that. And it's like, what I want people to know is that those gifts that you maybe think make you a weirdo, or best case scenario, make you like, oh, I have this thing that like I can help other people with. It's actually your greatest asset to every area of your life, to your business, to your personal relationships, to everything. And when you show up to all those areas in the same way, what happens is you become more powerful in all of them, which actually means that you become more powerful in your inherent healing gifts.
So it's like finding this balance between like, yes, you are a powerful psychic or tarot reader, but you're also, these other things. And I feel that it's as well as accepting the money and knowing that it's okay to accept money for these spiritual gifts. I had this one person, I was talking to them a few years ago, it's like 5 years ago, and I was saying, oh yeah, I'm a professional psychic and I charge X amount. And this bitch, it's a boy, I'm saying she in the gay terms, looks at me, puts his hand on his heart and goes, I have a gift of the goddess, and the goddess says I should never charge for psychic readings.
Oh God.
And if you're charging for a tarot reading, you're obviously not working with the goddess.
I'd be like, yeah, I'm glad that I follow a different goddess than you, because that sounds nice.
Right. I know. Which goddess?
I mean, like, that's the thing.
Which
like, maybe the person, like whoever that person channels, or whatever energy they channel, maybe they said that. I mean, like, I don't believe personally that any divine essence desires us to be broke, but like, even say that's true. Like, I'm not gonna stomp on someone else's like channeling, but I mean, I guess I just channel from a different source. Like, that's fine.
Well, that's
Work for me,
that's it.
you know?
That that's the thing of like saying, you know, goddess in general versus like which one. And when I give a comparison, like in my classes of like Witchcraft 101, I like to tell people that imagine there is a prism, right? And as we put this light through this prism, I can have red light, I can have green light. You know, maybe I want this, you know, red love energy, maybe I want this green energy, and attuning to which one. But I think with that was like more of an ego thing, because they said if you do anything psychic reading, Reiki, or anything like that, you can never charge ever. And if you charge, you're actually creating bad karma. And just like you said, like to bring, yeah, exactly. Like to bring it up to witch and ambition, and why that pisses me off is that I work my ass off for this. And like, I have to do some spiritual upkeep later on. I have to cleanse myself. I have to prepare myself. I have to meditate daily, and it's putting value to it. And I feel that when you charge for a spiritual service and the person is able to pay it, that means they put more value to it. That means that they will apply it more to where if I give XYZ clients this technique, but then if I give it to another one that paid for it, they'll actually apply it if they paid for it, because they're like, oh shit,
Yeah,
no, I paid for this.
Yeah.
That means that I should apply it right now. So it's, you know, feeling comfortable with charging and knowing that it is okay to charge.
Yeah, I think that ties right into like performance too, and anything that you do that's like considered fun. I know it's not
pretty much.
necessarily
It's like-
spiritual, but
It's like you're not allowed to have fun and make money. Like, that's such an interesting underlying limiting belief that a lot of us have, which we need to like definitely overcome if we're going to be financially secure and successful.
In the words of Wayne from Letterkenny, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Paid to play, bitches, witches.
I don't like that's not definitely not my personal experience, but I get the sentiment.
Yes, there's some light sprinkles in there. I was morally go ahead.
Oh no, I mean, I honestly, like, if someone comes and they're like, I shouldn't charge, I mean, at this point, I'm just like, I don't even have time for that. I really encourage them. I will maybe ask if I do have like a little time on my hands. I might ask some questions of like, oh, what makes you think that? You know, just like to unpack it a little bit. But like, you know, ultimately they're allowed to believe whatever they want. I'm not going to choose to believe the same. But it is interesting because, you know, I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs in general experience, like feeling they can only charge so much if they're having fun, because so many of us do have an association of work being miserable. And that's like a big problem that we definitely have to like dig into if you're going to go beyond your cap. But ultimately, like, I would just like to see, it goes back to the will, you know, I would like to see people empowering themselves. You know, I do see, like, with the internet being the way it is now, which is like, honestly, you know, overall fucking awesome. But the reality is this: with more information easily available, I also see more people looking for someone just to tell them the answers. And it's like, I am like, anybody who's ever like written to me or talked to me knows I'm like hella open book. Like, I love sharing and helping and like having these conversations with people for free in my DMs. Like, it's fun to me. And at the same time, like, there are definitely times where I'm like, you know, like, you could have Googled this. Like, you don't need me to tell you this. Like, I mean, it's like basic stuff.
Are you a spiritual dom?
I'm like, yo, just read the description, okay?
Yeah. Or I mean, it's just like, you could Google it. Like, it's like something very simple that's not like something only I know. And so, you know, I do think it's up to all of us to like decide that we're going to get the information we need. And sure, that is fine to ask in groups and stuff, but when it's this really basic stuff, it's like, maybe Google first, see what you can find, and then, you know, talk to people, you know, see if there's a class, things like that. But at the same time, we have to be proactive. And, you know, I think it's a big reason why a lot of there's this unfortunate stereotype in spiritual circles of like people being kind of wishy-washy in general. And I think that's just the reason. It's because we're not willing as a whole to translate that power we feel in our spirituality to other areas of our lives.
Cool. Well, Thank you for the witching and bitching.
Yeah,
that's good.
That was a cool topic.
That was good.
Mhm.
So we want to hear, how can we follow you? And like, what do you have offered? What programs do you have? Like, tell our listeners.
Yeah. So, okay, first of all, when is this going to air? Do we know?
It's going to be coming out on Wednesday, the
Oh, okay.
19th, I believe.
Okay, cool. So it's coming right up because I have a bad habit of like talking about things on a podcast and then like it airs and I realize the things aren't current anymore. So
Yeah.
you can find me online. My website is CaitlinMatanle.com, and you can find me on Instagram as well at Caitlin Matanle. I love talking about these topics, especially around business. It's my passion to show everybody who kind of is off the beaten path of entrepreneurship. So the psychics, the artists, the witches, the weirdos. It's really my passion to show them that entrepreneurship is easy, that it doesn't require a bunch of time. It doesn't require a bunch of resources. It is something you can start right now. And so any questions you have about how to translate your spiritual gifts into real money, into a real business, or just any weird esoteric questions you have about the spiritual path, I'm super open to. Find me on Instagram. My signature course is Boss Witch University, which is a magical business course. It basically teaches you in 6 weeks or 6 modules how I build businesses using magic. And we're talking magic from spells. We're talking magic from intention. We're talking magic from meditation. We're talking about how I energetically communicate with my future clients, how I pull them in, not like in a weird, creepy, like, you will come to me kind of way, but in a way that's like really connecting with the people who need you. And I couple that with the practical steps you need to take to start a business, which luckily are so much easier than you think. So you can check that out. And I'm also going to be launching in the next couple of weeks a group coaching program that is for beginning entrepreneurs in the spiritual space. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Find me. You can find all that on my website, CaitlinMatanle.com, and I would love to talk to you.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Yay. Thank you.
Caitlin has helped both of us personally many times, just as a friend and a mentor. So I definitely recommend checking her out and reaching out to her anytime.
Don't you do psychic readings too? Don't you like tarot readings?
I don't anymore.
Okay.
So I did them occasionally for clients, like in my coaching sessions, but I don't do tarot sessions anymore professionally, mostly just do those for friends and for my existing coaching clients. We do bring tarot and other things into our coaching sessions. I have a 3-month coaching package that is available to work with me where we go through the practical, the spiritual, and how we can combine it in all the ways I've said. So that said, I definitely bring my psychic gifts into my work with my clients, with my business coaching clients, because while I will never tell somebody what they need to do, whether as a psychic or as a coach, it is always really fun to watch things happen that I envisioned for a client that I knew was a fit for them, and watching them step into that power on their own. So.
Cool. Thank you for all our listeners. Give it a look and give it a check.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap up here. Remember that you can find us on Instagram under Fireburn Cauldron Bubble. You can also visit fireburncauldronbubble.com. Enter your email for a free video on how to build an altar.
The Way of the Witch will go into some fine detail on how you can set up your altar, and you get to see us, behind the scenes of what's going on, and come see that video.
Yeah, totally. You can also find us on Facebook, Fireburn Cauldron Bubble, and we want you to send us your questions, your comments. Be sure to subscribe, share with a friend, check out our YouTube channel, same name, Fireburn Cauldron Bubble.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Artemis Fox.
I'm Luna Hawks.
And this is Fireburn Cauldron Bubble.
Casting spells.
And sassy as hell.